Good afternoon, grade 8 learners and colleagues. My name is Mekha Tebe. I'm a maths teacher at Mononsa Secondary School in Thabo Mkhutsanyana district. So I'll be presenting to you this afternoon common fractions in grade 8. So let's start with the prerequisite knowledge that is necessary for this specific topic of fractions. Learners must know a definition of what a fraction is. A fraction is a number that is a part of a group. Now let's take it to real life situation. One large pizza is cut into 8 equal slices. If you express this as a fraction, it's 8 out of 8. So it's 8 eighths. It's one full pizza. It is written, a fraction is written in the form A out of B, where A, the number on top, is called the numerator, and B, the number at the bottom, is called the denominator. It is also important for learners to know that the numerator represents the part that one has. In other words, if we have, out of the 8 slices, if you eat maybe 2 of the 8 slices, you shall have eaten 2 of the 8 parts, which is what the numerator represents. And then the denominator represents total number of equal parts in a whole. So here in our example that we made of a pizza, we are working out of 8 slices. So the denominator in this case would be 8. Now, another thing that is important when we deal with fractions is for learners to remember the properties of numbers, the ones that we did in unit 1 or in topic 1 of this term, whereby we know that 0 cannot be the denominator. If 0 is the denominator, then the number would be undefined. So it is also important for learners to remember this when they deal with fractions. Now, another prerequisite knowledge or part of the prerequisite knowledge is for learners to know the different types of fractions. Let's start with the proper fractions. The proper fraction is a fraction where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. For example, 3/5 and 4/7, meaning that the small number is on top and the big number is at the bottom. Look at the animal there. That is a typical example or illustration of what a proper fraction should look like. This is proper, the small on top of a big. Then another type of a fraction here is improper fractions. Now, in an improper fraction, a big number is at the top and the small number is at the bottom. Yeah, so we must agree that it's quite improper. For example, 5 halves. So you can see there, the numerator is 5 is bigger and the denominator is 2 smaller. And the other example, the same is happening. You've got 13 sevens. So the numerator of 13 is bigger than the denominator of 7. So now if you bear in mind the picture of our animal there, then you can see that the opposite of what we see there would be really improper. The third type of a fraction, as part of the prerequisite knowledge, is the mixed numbers. Now, mixed numbers is a combination of a whole number part and a fraction part in one. For example, we've got 3 halves. So this mixed number can be converted into an improper fraction, whereby we multiply the denominator by the whole number and add the numerator. Then all of that over the denominator of the fraction part, meaning that the whole number here is 3, the numerator is 1, the denominator is 2. So what will happen for us to change the mixed number into an improper fraction? This is what we will do. We multiply the denominator of 2 by the whole number, which is 3, and add 1 to it. Then all divide by the denominator of 2. And then the answer would be 7 halves. Okay, moving on. Now let's get down to dividing common fractions by common fraction, as it is the requirement in the ATP of grade 8. So we are going to use a method called invert and multiply to do this. So for us to be able to use this method successfully, first learners, we need to know what a reciprocal is. Now, when you multiply a fraction by its reciprocal, you must know that the product is always 1. The reciprocal is also called the multiplicative inverse. For example, reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 out of 1, or just a whole number 3. Also here, it is also important for us to note that if we have a whole number, we must bear in mind that there is an invisible denominator of 1, which also is a whole number. Even if it is not written, we must know that the denominator of 1 is there. Another example, a reciprocal of 5/6 is 6/5. That means that when you multiply these two fractions, they will give you a product of 1. So it is important for us to understand this very well so that we can apply it to whenever necessary, especially when we do division of fractions. Now, how do we apply these skills? Invert and multiply. Let's take example number 1 here. We've got 1/3 divided by 1/6. Now, if you work it out, the first thing that the learners must be able to know or must be able to do is first change the division sign into a multiplication sign. That is part where you change the division sign into a multiplication sign. And then the fraction that comes after the division sign, then you will find its reciprocal. You invert it. So here we've got 1/6. So the reciprocal thereof would be 6 out of 1. Then we can work it out from here using the rules of multiplication, where we multiply numerator by numerator and denominator multiplied by denominator. So in this case, our numerators are 1 and 6. We multiply 1 multiplied by 6. It will give us 6. And multiplying the denominators together, 3 multiplied by 1, give us the denominator of 3. Now, this fraction can be simplified where we say 3 into 6 goes twice. This is the example number 1. Now, moving on now to more examples. Sure. Let's move to example number 2. Here we've got 2/5 divided by 3 -7. Now here there's something different now. The denominator in this case is negative. Now what we must do, we'll sort out that later. What we can do now, we first change the division, we invert and multiply. We change the division sign into a multiplication sign. And then we change the fraction, right? It's reciprocal, where we'll have -7/3. Then we multiply using the laws of multiplication. The numerators together, 2 multiplied by -7. And the denominators together, 5 multiplied by 3. So here we also need to remember how to multiply integers. A negative multiplied by a positive will end up with a -14. And in the denominator, we have 5 multiplied by 3. Both are positive, so we end up with a +15. Now, the numerator in this case, because it is negative, it will affect the whole fraction. Learners, we must also remember that a fraction is a number. It's just one number. So whatever that is happening with the number in the denominator or in the numerator will affect the whole fraction as is. So in this case, the last step that we need to do here is to sort out the issue of the negative sign. So the negative sign will affect the whole fraction, therefore the whole fraction will end up being a 14 out of 15 a negative. Why am I skipping? Then the last example, learners and colleagues, we have 4 halves divided by 8 thirds.
Escape.
So the first fraction there is a mixed number. So the first thing that we must do here is to change the mixed number into an improper fraction. So we do that, we multiply the denominator of 2 number 4 and add 1 to it, all divided by the denominator of 2. Then we change the division sign into a multiplication sign, and then we find the multiplicative inverse of 8x, which is 3x. Then we simplify here, applying the laws of multiplication. We end up with 9 halves multiplied by 3x. Then we multiply using the laws of multiplication. Numerator multiplied by numerator, 9 multiplied by 3, and denominator multiplied by denominator, 2 multiplied by 8. Then we end up with the numerator gives us 27 and the denominator gives us 16. Now we can further simplify this because it is now an improper fraction. So we simplify by dividing 27 by 16. It will give us 1, and that will be our whole number part. And there is a denominator of 11 there. That will be part of our numerator, and the denominator, we take the denominator that is in the question. Now, this is all that I have for you, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time here. And goodbye.
Escape again.